Hi everyone, in today's video, I'm going to teach you how to perform effective data analysis on your Vapi assistants. We'll be diving in how to request key data like average call duration and average call cost. Plus, I'll show you how to set up alerts for when these metrics indicate that something might be wrong. Now, this is especially crucial when managing multiple assistants like I am on Vapi, with the goal here being to ensure that these assistants are operational 24/7. Now, there has been times where I've only figured out that an assistant is not functioning properly by a customer that calls their assistant. This is not ideal. Without the right systems in place, it can actually be challenging to know when an assistant is not functioning properly. So in this video, I am teaching you how to ensure or mitigate the chances of something like that happening. Now, you may be thinking, Vapi already has an analytical dashboard, and this can be helpful to some extent. However, as a developer, I find it lacking in some key areas. As you can see here, this is today's overview, 34 minutes of calls with 63 calls. And for privacy's sake, I've blurred out the assistant names and things like that. However, what I would like to see here and what would be far more valuable to see is the average call cost for each individual assistant. Now, what you see here is an aggregation of all your combined assistants. If I switch to weekly view, it'll be the same. To monthly view, it'll be the same. As you can see here, a fair amount of calls and minutes throughout the month. However, sometimes this data is wrong. It may have anomalies. For example, the average call duration of this particular assistant today is 25 minutes, or it just doesn't have the specific analytics that I'm looking for, namely each assistant's average call cost and each assistant's average duration, which you can see on the side here. However, like I said, sometimes this is wrong. I will mention what's even more frustrating is the lack of actionable features on this dashboard. There's actually no way, as far as I'm concerned, to set alerts if, say, the call cost increases or the duration of the call drops below a certain threshold, both of which would indicate that an assistant is either broken or needs refinement. This video aims to address just that. Additionally, we'll set up a more effective monitoring system that evaluates key metrics like average call cost and average call duration as an indicator of something going wrong. Let's dive in. Now, the way we can start to do this is head over to our API reference, and you'll see here a variety of API requests you can make regarding these assistants, but what we're looking for is right at the bottom, hidden right at the bottom down here. And this is called analytics, create analytics queries. This is perfect because we can request a query to Vapi and have some data returned. And what's cool here is that you can request data by month, day, minute, or hour, which can be really beneficial when monitoring your assistants properly. To explain a bit how this works, we obviously have an authorization header with our Vapi API key, but most importantly is what's in the body here. As you can see, we have an object with a query array, and we can start to map out how we want our query to look like. So the first order of business here is we're selecting from a table. Specifically, we have one option here, which is calls. So we're querying based on call data. Further down here, we can specify the time range in which we're querying. So for example, like I was saying, you can do it by minute, hour, day, week, month, quarter, year, decade, century, millennium. So the last three there really wouldn't matter. You've got an array of options here that we can organize a query by. Now, to explain what I'm going to be doing in this video, I want to query specifically each assistant based on their average call duration and average call cost. To do that, you can map it in here. However, it's probably easier if I just show you. I find mapping out queries from here a bit confusing and complicated, or more complicated than it needs to be. So to give you an example, over here on JSON editor, we have this query array. We have our table, key, and value, which is call, and we're going to be grouping our query by the type of call. So whether it's inbound or outbound, our assistant ID, so we're able to identify the metrics and their associated assistant. We're going to return the status of that call and the ended reason, but more specifically, we're going to perform some operations down here. And that's what you see in this array. So we're returning the average cost, the average duration, and the average cost breakdown of the LLM. To explain what I mean here by these operations you can perform, as you can see down here, Vapi specifies the required parameters needed to make a request like this. So obviously you'll need your API key as an authorization header, but in the body we have a bunch of attributes that explain what's going on. The table, which I showed back here, can only be call. We're going to group by these available options. So for example, I chose type, assistant ID, ended reason, but you can also choose analysis success, evaluation, and the call status. We can name the query whatever we want, hence the name analytics. That's a required parameter. Again, we can specify the time range. So for example, this request is quarterly. And then finally at the bottom, what's required is the operations you're performing. So we have a few available options. We can get the sum, the average, the count, the minimum, and maximum. Now for this specific example, I only really need the average call cost and average call duration. So I'm not going to be using these available options. However, if you wanted to use a different one, it would look like something like that, or min or maximum. It really doesn't matter. It's up to your discretion on how you want to use this analytical query request. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to return averages. And finally, the column, which specifies where you want this operation to occur. We have a few options here. So the ID, the cost breakdown, LLM, we can get the cost breakdown of speech to text, and a bunch of other ones, but again, we're only getting the call cost and duration for this example. Your response will be in a results object that you'll see in a moment. But for simplicity's sake, I'm going to be using this query request that you can copy, and I'll leave in the description so that you can copy it yourself. All we'll have to do now is create a make scenario that will be triggered when we specify it to be. And the operation I want this to do is return the average call cost and duration of a specific assistant and notify me if the call cost increases past a certain threshold or the call cost duration decreases past an average threshold. This would indicate to me at least that something's going wrong and the assistant may need refinement. So let's jump over to Make and map this out a bit more. So over here in Make, how do we start performing this data analysis? Well, as per the Vapi specification, we know this is a post request to their analytics endpoint as per here, and the request type is post. So what we'll have to do first is create a HTTP request, and this is pretty easy to set up. First and foremost, our endpoint URL, we know as per the documentation, we can just copy this, paste it in like so. The method is a post request, and we'll need to add an authorization header like with any API request. So we'll add a header, authorization, bearer, and then you'll put your Vapi API key in here, which I'll leave for later so you can't see. Next, what you'll do is create our body. So it's going to be raw. The content type is JSON. And remember the query construct we had before, we can just go ahead and copy that in here. Now I'm going to use the original one using average for all, and we'll just do the time ranges quarterly. So we can copy this and we'll paste it in here. That's all we have to do. Hit no for past response and we can go from there. Hit OK and we can run this. And there we go. So we have a 201 with our output data. To explain this briefly, what we can do first is just pass this response so it's a bit easier to read. To do that, we'll add a new module and look for JSON. If you can't see it, just search it. And we're looking for parse JSON. The JSON string is going to be our data. Go ahead and hit OK. And now we can run this. So you can see our output bundle under results. And this is going to be the result for each assistant I have that's live. We can perform analysis on all the assistants within the same make scenario. However, it's probably a bit easier to do a scenario separate to each assistant. So you can see here, number one, this is my assistant ID, and we have that data we requested. So the average cost, average call duration, and average cost breakdown of the LLM. Down here, we have the same data for a different assistant and so forth. But specifically, we just want the data from the first one. What I actually want here, I don't necessarily need the LLM cost breakdown. I just want to collect the average cost and average duration. The reason I want to collect those is so I can set up a filter that will filter to a Slack channel when the average cost is below a certain threshold, or probably more beneficial, above a threshold. I'll do the same again for the duration. So if the duration is below a certain threshold, for example, based on the quarter, this specific assistant has an average call duration of 1:30. I would know if this assistant was acting out of line if this was below 20 seconds, for example. Similar to average cost, I would know if there was something wrong with the assistant if the average cost was inflated greatly. So that's the reason I'm going to pick these two metrics as the starting points to flag my Slack team. Let's build this out more and you'll see what I mean. Next, we can do a tool and we can set a variable. Go ahead and add that there. And the first variable we want is the cost. To set this up, we only want the first result of that bundle. Remember, we had 5 bundles with different assistants. I just want the first assistant. So to do that, our results are contained in an array, and the array has a corresponding index. Inside an array, we can map the index. So the first result is going to be 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5. So to do that, what you can do, we'll hit into result, the average cost, and within this array, we can just press 1. As you can see, if I run that, it'll return just the cost of that first result, 0.152, and you can see 0.152. I'm going to do the same thing for the average call duration. So we can hit tools, set variable, add that there, and we'll do duration. And again, it's going to be the same logic here. So hit average duration, and in specific, we want the first one. If we run that, we now have our first assistant's average cost of the quarter, as well as the average call duration of the quarter. Now, this isn't to say you're limited to searching by quarter. Like I said, you can do this for hourly, every minute, every day, every month. But for simplicity's sake, we're just doing it by quarter. This is a pretty simple make scenario. All we have to do now is really filter by these two variables and then message our Slack team if it indicates that the cost is inflated or the average call duration is decreased. To do that, we can add another module, flow control, and we'll just add a router. The first router, let's say, can be in regards to the call cost. So we can set up a filter, cost, and the condition is going to be cost. And our operator as a numeric operator is greater than or equal to, probably better, greater than. And we're gonna add 0.17. So our average cost of the quarter is 0.15. And considering it's an average over a large amount of time, we know that is pretty fixed in its cost. It's not going to go up or down or vary too much. So if this was greater than 1.7, it would indicate that something's going wrong. So we can set that as so, hit OK, and then we're going to do the same sort of filter down here, but for duration. Our condition is going to be the duration, and again, we're going to use a numeric operator that says less than, and we're going to do less than 0.2, which would indicate that the assistant's really not working. Hit OK, and then all we have to do, you can set this up however you want, is message a Slack team a warning if these filter conditions are met. Now, you're really not limited here with this data. This is one specific use case of how you might want to use this analytics endpoint, but I can think of multiple scenarios where you want to use this. For example, you can take these averages and project it on a graph, have that uploaded to a slide deck to show your customer or something like that. But what's been most beneficial for me is something like this. We can continue and we can just add a Slack channel message, create a message down here, and you can search from the list here. We'll add the channel type, it's technical, and then we can add a message. So in bold, we can do warning, assistant, #1, cost increase, past 17 cents. And then we can do something like it. It's at, it's currently at this. And we can really do the same for our second one. Select from the list, we'll add our channel in here. We can do warning, assistant 1, call, duration, we can do less than 0.2. And then right now it's gonna be at duration. There you go. That's a whole scenario on how to set up alerts based on specific analytics of your Vapi assistants. To show this in action, because in real time, the cost and duration isn't falling in between those, I'll change the filter here to greater than 5, so that'll flag, and then I'll do the same thing here, less than 1.9. So if I were to run this now, both those filters would work, and the Slack messages will get created. I'll show you in Slack, and look at that. So we have warning, cost increase, and then it has the cost and call duration under that. But in reality, this is set to the filter I just changed. That's very basically how to set up some warning systems as per real-time analytics. Now, like I said, there are multiple use cases. You may want to use this analytical endpoint here, but this is just one example that actually has, at least for me, provided some real-time value and actual value to live assistants. That's all for today, guys. That was another short one. If you need any help regarding this analytical endpoint on Vapi, let me know in the comments and I can help you out. I'd like to reiterate that this can be crucial for when working with a lot of these assistants. You can start to map out and set up alerts like I did in this video for each specific assistant based on key metrics. If you're a business owner looking to integrate or needing help with Vapi assistants, check out the link below and you can get in touch with myself. But that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay ahead of the AI curve. Until next week.